what you're seeing is people are tired of the propaganda.
Absolutely, and the rhetoric.
And here's the biggest surprise for me. People are tired of being told because you're this demographic, you have to vote this way.
Well, I am sleepy.
I'm tired.
Bro, I have not been to bed really yet. I took a nap.
Yeah.
And so, I was up all night. There was,
I didn't make it.
You didn't make it? You didn't make it?
I didn't make it. I tried.
Oh, man. What time? What time you go to bed?
So I was up. It was like 2:15, 2:30. And I was in my head. I'm watching the results come in. I just want to wait for them to. Who wins Pennsylvania?
Yeah. That was it.
Whoever wins Pennsylvania, it's over. And I was like, if they'll just call Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so I kept flipping to every station. They'd be like, well, it's 95% in.
Right,
it's 97% in. It's 98% in. It's still too close to call. And I kept waiting. And next thing I know, I fell asleep on the couch.
But you text me and said, hey, man, you're up for it? You up all night?
I was high at about like 1 o'clock.
He was like, you up? I was like, yeah, I'm up. I'm up.
2 o'clock, I went way down.
See, I thought you were still up, bro. Yes, dude, I was.
I went to bed and Joe Biden was the president. I woke up and Donald Trump was the president. And I wondered, did we go back in time?
You know what's so crazy? All right, this is so crazy.
What year is it?
Hold on. Really? I just said, I was like, wait. Joe was the president. I actually, I totally forgot.
I know a lot of people have.
Joe Biden is still currently until inauguration.
He has stayed very much out of the spotlight.
Yeah, it's so funny when you just said, I was like, oh yeah, I had to pause for a minute. But yes, we went to bed with one president, woke up with a new president.
The president-elect.
And which we're going to talk about today. There is a lot of tea behind this election, bro. Like, I'm telling you, I don't know what I expected or what I thought was going to happen, but what happened, I didn't see.
I mean, it was almost as exciting as Georgia playing Florida last week. Beating Florida. Almost.
Listen, okay, first, and let's
not quite, but almost.
Can we just talk about that game was way too close, by the way.
We off track.
Okay,
so
sorry.
Apparently, we were waking up this morning to the results of our national election. There was obviously state stuff going on, and there was amendments left and right. And
man.
So it was a big night. It was election night in America. And even though the states there are some swing states that have not completely come out with the final results of their elections.
Right.
It's really clear that the former president is now the president-elect, Donald Trump, and that he didn't just win.
Man,
he won. We don't know exactly how many yet, but it looks like at least 5 of the swing states.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have any stop the steal comments.
And and I think it's probably. I mean, Jeff, we don't know, but man, he could end up with 300 electoral votes.
Hey, man, the way that things are tracking,
he's got the 270.
Yeah, sure.
He could end up with 300.
Yeah, and the way things are tracking, which we'll get into here in a moment, man, it is super possible that can happen, Brent, because I think you saw certain trends that started early in the night last night, especially as it relates to certain counties that were primarily Democratic counties that weren't really performing.
And
demographics that weren't really performing the way that the Harris-Walz camp anticipated. And many of the Democratic strategists kind of anticipated. So because you could see that early on, it really played out throughout the rest of the night.
Yeah. And there's factors. We'll talk about that. There's some factors that these pollsters, and I'm a huge fan of the social sciences. I know pollsters right now are probably taking a beating.
Yeah, they are.
They're not. They're but people, and left or right, are going, man, you guys weren't even close.
Right.
But the truth is, there are factors that are on the scene, literally weeks going up to the election. I'm talking about long-form podcasts that weren't in the pollsters' parameters of how they're trying to gauge the electorate. So it's a difficult time for them. I don't want to throw them under the bus completely.
Right.
I think they try to do a good job. I think some pollsters and some polling companies can be used as political weapons, certainly. But by and large, you're talking about social scientists who love numbers and quantitative and qualitative analytics and all that stuff. Surveys and the rest. So but they were wrong. Completely wrong. And so we had the Senate is now majority Republican.
Yeah, man. The House.
We now have a Republican president. And then there was quite a few amendments.
Yeah.
That we'll talk about as well. So let's break it up this way. And obviously, I didn't stay up as long as you did.
I was curious, man. I was curious, and I was having some conversations that I want to talk about today.
So, well, you know what kept me up was the memes.
Hey, man, X was on fire.
I mean, Twitter was the place for entertainment.
It was a comedy show.
So I had the television on, and I flipped through all the major news outlets, waiting for things to be called.
Yeah.
But in between them calling states, I was totally scrolling looking for the funniest memes possible.
You sent me
I
a
sent
couple.
some to you. Somebody did.
That Florida State.
Yeah,
one,
that was
though.
my favorite. So for all my college football fans, somebody created a meme where they called the state of Georgia for Donald Trump.
Yes.
And they had under there, one category was Donald Trump. He got 62.7% of the vote.
That was classic.
But he was competing against Florida State, who only scored 3. Which echoes back to the bowl game at the end of last year.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, it just for college football fans, you were like, "Where was this guy all my life?"
That
this was a
so
great
good.
meme.
Yeah. But no, man, so it was so much happening, dude.
Yeah.
It was a lot of entertainment. And so let's really kind of unpack, kind of what happened, what we saw. I've had some conversation with some friends that have been on the ground and stuff, man, because I think that this really, this election really has some long-term, and historical implications, in my humble opinion, on that. So.
Right. How about this? First question.
Yeah.
What surprised you?
Well, it surprised me that there wasn't that blue wall didn't happen, and the wave that was supposed to happen, because there were a lot of conversations like, hey, all right, it looks like Trump is going to take Georgia and North Carolina. And so if North Carolina is off the board, you got to have Pennsylvania. It was like the big 3, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And so, so my 1A that that surprised me was that, there was this anticipation that even though the Democrats lost the North Carolina, that they were going to kind of pick up, those 3 battleground states, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think that was surprising. But within that, Brent, what really surprised me was the way that Harris underperformed in a lot of urban areas and a lot of highly Democratic counties.
Yeah.
I mean, and across the board, where you would take a lot of, because I flipped through all the news outlets and stuff, and you kind of took a history between Hillary versus Trump and Biden, and then Harris and Trump.
She underperformed where Biden was in 2020 by real percentage points.
Yes, and
almost across the board.
That surprised me, just because, again, like we were looking at polls, we were, looking at trends or hearing, pundits and strategists talk about things. So I just didn't see those 2 things happening the way that they did. What about you? Anything surprise you?
3 things surprised me, excuse me. One is it surprised me that I thought Trump would win. I thought he would win by, but not by a big margin. I thought it would be enough for it to be a clear victory.
Yeah.
I thought he'd pick up a swing state or 2. I thought he would win.
Yeah.
I thought he'd get North Carolina, Georgia. I thought Pennsylvania could go either way. He'd get the other swing states, and there'd be a surprise or 2 out there along the way. I thought she would get the other swing states, is what I meant to say. And so it looks like he might pick up the whole blue wall.
Right.
When it's all said and done. It has to be the biggest surprise.
Yeah.
The second biggest surprise for me of the night was Virginia. Virginia was a state that Joe Biden won by 10 percentage points last time. Yeah. And Harris did win it.
Yeah.
But she only won it. The numbers are, they're still. Last time I saw it was somewhere around 3.
Yeah.
That's a big gap he closed.
Yeah, he did.
And a lot of that is where some of the conversation around LGBTQ plus and gender affirming surgeries and all those different things. Those conversations are happening lots of places. But we know they're happening for sure. In Virginia, I think that played a big role. And so Virginia, when you see a swing of 7 percentage points, away from the party they voted for last time, that's a really, really big swing.
And I'll be honest, another thing that really kind of surprised me too was, obviously everybody heard about, the whole Madison Square Garden rally. And
I thought that was all overhyped.
And things that were said specifically about the comment on Puerto Rico.
I didn't think it was going to.
And so what was the thought was that would impact the Latino and Hispanic vote. And you saw that there was a gap where she underperformed by 25% of what Joe Biden had performed in 2020. And so
with an entire swath of people.
And this was a national poll and stuff. So we're not even talking about just state to state, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. You're talking about nationally where this was. And, we're a very emotional country, where this was a very recent kind of last case sarah, rally. So it's kind of like the last thing that was in the mind of people. It's like, I think the Democratic strategy was like, oh, let's keep recycling this soundbite because it's going to tell this population of Americans, hey, this is what this candidate and party thinks of you. Well, people responded to that rhetoric or posting. They responded with their vote by saying, hey, we don't believe that. We still think.
But that comment was made, Jeff, in the context of, oh, this is just like a Nazi rally. And so what you have is, I think you had a bunch of people who were going, quit calling us Nazis. Quit calling us garbage. Like, we're tired of it. Like, this, you're talking about half the country here.
Right.
Like, so I think it was, that's why I didn't think the Puerto Rico comment, is it distasteful and grotesque? Yes.
I thought the comment was very horrible.
And then the fact, it's some comedian trying to be funny. If Dave Chappelle would have made that joke in a club.
Totally different. It lands different. But at a
this
presidential
guy made
rally,
this
probably not the best idea.
This comedian Tony Hinco made this joke at a rally inside an arena. So I never bought into just because you go to Madison Square Gardens and just because there was a Nazi rally there in the third, it's bridged too far to try to connect those two. I never bought into that.
But that was the propaganda. That's it. It is propaganda.
What you're seeing is people are tired of the propaganda.
Absolutely, and the rhetoric.
And they're tired. And here's the biggest surprise for me. People are tired of being told because you're this demographic, you have to vote this way.
Hey, let's talk about that really quickly. Obviously, I have, this, a lot of friends in the African-American community who have a lot of opinions about, just the political climate, where we are, candidates, and the African-American vote was a hot topic of conversation. And I can speak directly to this because I have been, on conference calls, I've been in Zoom meetings, I've, had a lot of conversation with people, pastors, leaders, students, and there was a lot of different feelings on this idea that if you don't vote, for Donald Trump, as an if you vote for Donald Trump as an African American, then that says something about you as an African American. And to be honest, there were a large percentage of the African American population who had a problem with individuals telling them, one, you should vote for this candidate simply because of your ethnicity and that there is a better connection.
So your mind
point.
And your conscience don't matter as much as your ethnicity.
Absolutely. And I think that was unfortunately a backfiring strategy that took place within the African American community because and the polls will continue to come out and I have some very good friends who are helping me get through some real life data that I love to show share later on, that what we are seeing early on or what's being seen early on is that a lot of African Americans who did vote for Trump voted because they felt like, as I and my wife are, we are proud conservative Black evangelicals who believe in the sanctity of human life. We believe very much in the traditional family, and struggled with the whole idea and attachment that the LGBTQ plus IA community is the same as the African American civil rights movement and the struggles of American slavery, and really felt like a lot of African Americans who believe like myself and my wife was like, hey, I think the pendulum has swung too far to the left when it comes to these topics of the sanctity of human life, and when it comes to sexual ethics and gender equality and all that stuff. And so they voted, Brent, even after being told
it shocked me
that they should vote one way because, you know, African Americans, you should vote Democrat just because. If you don't, then you're this and that. And they were like, hey, similar to what we saw in the Hispanic and Latino community, they were like, nah, man, it's too far gone. We want to see an America that comes back to the center of true conservative,ism.
So let me ask you this. Was it a vote for, so you basically you had the Hispanic vote and you had the black vote, black male vote primarily.
Yeah.
That were the two of the big surprises of the night.
Very much so.
Was it a vote for the policies of Donald Trump, or was it a vote in protest against the Democratic Party? Like, hey, you take us for advantage of us. You think we should just be loyal to you because of our skin color, or ethnicity, or because we're whatever, because of our stance on immigration, or what? Which I think their stance on immigration backfired on them, because I think you have very hard-working first and second generation immigrants who have, like, you have parents who have put blood in the dirt to carve out a life for their children, and they look up and they see a bunch of reckless policies on immigration, and they go, hold on. I worked my butt off to provide for my family, and you're just going to go, all right, everybody else gets it. No, it should be hard. You should have to work hard for the life you want to provide for your family. And so I think that some of that backfired.
And I think
we'll find out why as everything unfolds. But do you think it was a vote for, we're just team this now, or was it a vote to say, hey, you're not taking advantage of us anymore?
I think it was a combination of both, to be honest. I think it was a fair combination of both. I think, if you talk, there were issues that everyone had personally with both candidates, and that's neither here nor there, but there were issues. So take personality out of it, of just, hey, you know what, policy, what we think will be best for America moving forward. Hey, we more so than having we don't want to have conversations about he, she, they, and them. We want to have a conversation about, hey, eggs are too high. Milk is too high. Gas needs to come down. I would prefer not to have a 7% interest rate, on my mortgage loan, And hey, I know I'm not going to go back to my 2.8% interest rate, but at least if I want to move, I like to not be back there. And so I think that
you can't move right now. On paper, it's just too expensive.
Exactly. And so I think it was a combination of.
That's the other thing, is that the young vote did not go.
No.
If I had to say in order, the third one would be the younger vote. The younger vote obviously usually swings, especially in university towns, That's what I was going to say. Very far left.
And you saw that they didn't.
It didn't.
Yeah, I think I noticed that when
it didn't swing right, but it's the percentage points of what the left would normally get.
That's the point. The percentage points of it. I think what really kind of caught my eye was I was flipping through and they were focusing on, I can't remember what news outlet, but they were focusing on Wisconsin, and they were talking about the votes around the University of Wisconsin, and just kind of like what it had been trending, how it had been trending in favor of the Democrats, young professionals and everything like that college town. But they weren't seeing the turnout, the turnout and also the response as favorable as they had seen the projection showing in previous. And you were seeing that in a lot of college towns across the country.
Yeah. I don't know. I was listening to an economist last night who said the younger vote, he believed, was less favorable towards Democrats because you got a bunch of 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds who are going, I'd like to be able to buy a house before I'm 55.
Yeah, I got kids that are
you know what I'm saying? That are going, how is there I don't want to, I don't mind living in an apartment.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with living in an apartment.
Right.
But if I'm working to go to school and I have a side job to pay for school and I'm sacrificing now.
Yeah.
I'm sacrificing now to set myself up so that I want to be able to have a home where I can raise a family, where I can, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with somebody going, I'd like to have a house with a patch of grass.
Right.
You know what I mean?
My kids are having that conversation with me right now. My son and my daughter-in-law,
I mean, as a parent, this, as a parent, it is what an incredible thing to be on the inside of your house and hear giggling in the backyard because your kids are playing.
Yeah.
And they're playing outside.
Yeah.
To not always have to go, okay, we're going to all pack up and go to the park together so that we can get some outside time.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't buy a house, you can't really do that.
Yeah.
And so that is starting to weigh heavy, weighed heavier on the younger vote this time than other times around, Jeff.
Yeah, man. I mean, so those three topics were essential. One, immigration. Two, well, probably the economy was probably number one, immigration, and then three, foreign policy, and I think all the other stuff, I think just a lot of minority voters with everything that leading up, some of the things that you saw the Harris Walz campaigning on, the hot button item, for them, it was just, minority voters, particularly African-American voters, was just like, I like to go back to the traditional sense of what the word conservatism means.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next question, last night, in a nutshell, was a Democratic Party, in my opinion, who focused more on their agenda with a laser-like focus that it's going to be this. We're kind of hedging our bets on some of this ideology that pushes out to the fringes.
Yeah.
They hedge their bets on this. Where we are. And then you had a Republican Party that goes, no, we're going to completely realign.
Yeah.
And they hedge their bets on realignment, on a broad coalition.
Yep.
I mean, you think about who had on their bingo card that Team Trump would include RFK, Joe Rogan, Dana White, Elon Musk. Most of the people I'm saying are former Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard, who was a former presidential candidate for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And the list could go on. Who had those? Ain't nobody got that on their bingo card 5-6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so I think what happened is, I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong right now. I'm talking about it from a strategy standpoint.
Conversation.
I think one went, we're going to hedge our bets here. The other went, no, we're going to hedge our bets on realignment to make the table really big.
Yeah.
And you see what happened.
And I think also another thing, it wasn't surprising, but I think as we've talked about even strategy, I think, there was a miss on the vice presidential candidate for the Harris campaign.
You think?
I think I think Josh Shapiro probably would have been a better pick. I'm
gonna keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, this is more of just opinion along with conversation.
I have a strong opinion on it.
Yeah, well, I know. I don't know, but I would say
why she didn't choose him.
I know. I know. People will probably be one like, Brent, expound upon that. But I will say
I'll say it because I'm mad.
Yeah.
Not mad at her. Mad at this idea. It's a leadership principle that we should get. When you're the big dog leader, you don't want to choose another leader to be on your team that could outshine you.
That's fair.
And you look at right, left, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Who they choose to be their running mate. They don't want somebody that's going to outshine them.
Yeah.
Obama picked Biden.
Yeah.
Trump picked Pence. You go back.
Yeah.
Bush picked Cheney. Cheney didn't have a personality.
Yeah.
Cheney did have more power as a vice president probably than any other vice president. But you go back and you look, no leader wants to be. There's insecurity in every leader.
It is. And
maybe even a touch of narcissism. I don't know. I'm not going that far. But what I'm saying is,
I want to win.
Pride was probably either pride or he said no. Those are my two options in my head.
Yeah, it don't sound like he said no. And so I think to your point of where the party kind of had this laser light focus, when you put this ticket together, you affirm that laser light focus that really felt for many too far to the left.
Yeah.
And I think that was concerning.
And Shapiro, the guy from Pennsylvania, would not have been that. He's considered left of the center.
A left of
Democrat,
the center, yes. Exactly.
Where Waltz is the guy who put tampons in boys' bathrooms.
Right, yeah.
It's like that.
And I think that played, Brent, as you're talking about, so surprised, yes, but when we kind of unpacked it holistically, not really. Because I think for many that I've talked to, it's like, woo, there's African-American leaders would say, I don't know about that one.
Yeah. All right, what encourages you right now? All right, you and I are two men who care deeply about our faith.
Yes.
We care deeply about our families.
Yes.
And we care deeply about our ministry.
Yes.
We're in a ministry where we have dedicated our lives through Student Leadership University to building up the next generation to think, dream, and lead at the feet of Jesus.
Amen.
We care about this stuff.
Absolutely.
So as a leader who is leading, I want you to maybe take your dad hat off for a moment.
Sure.
As a leader who is a minister, as a pastor, as that mindset.
Yeah.
As somebody who's leading this helping to inform and have an imprint on this next generation for the glory of God. What encourages you right now?
That their voice through their vote spoke loud and clear on where they want to see their country go. And I what encouraged me is that morality, Trump, no pun intended, emotion. I think that there was this wave of the hope train, which, okay, I want us to be hopeful. But what was encouraging is that this generation spoke loud and clear. As we had just articulated earlier about the things that surprised us, I think because we were surprised, within the being surprised, I'm also encouraged that, man, they're paying attention, Brent. They're able to, chew the meat, spit out the bones, and really kind of move through, kind of power through the rhetoric and the propaganda and the muck and say, no, we want to see a country that believes in the sanctity of human life. We want to be a part of a country where we honor the traditional family. We want to be a part of a country that really values, morality and Christian ethics and seeing things through the lens of a Christian worldview, even if you're not a full believer. I think what encouraged me was like, man, this generation, through what we saw in this wave and this shift, this generation and our country as a whole spoke very, very loud with their vote.
I think a lot louder than anybody thought they'd speak.
Very much so. So I'm encouraged, man. What about yourself? What do you think?
There's two things that encourage me about where we are right now. One is I'm a huge fan of open dialogue. So I think as a Christian, I think the more time there is to converse and dialogue, the better. There's no fear. Jesus is one. He doesn't need me to defend him, but he allows me to defend the faith. I stand guard over sound doctrine, is what Paul would teach us. So the idea of long form communication, for example, with like long form podcasts, that's probably the biggest platform that's happening on right now. To me, that's encouraging. Yeah. Because I think the reason that the younger vote came out like it did is because there were platforms who went, okay, we're not going to treat you like you have the attention span. Right. I love what Jay says, of an AM radio on scan. Right. We're going to treat you like you actually can sit down at a table for a long conversation. And so they were able to digest long form conversations hours at a time. I remember when my son called me and he voted for the first time in this election. I remember my son called me and he went, man, I just did a Google search on where I could listen to the candidates. And he said, Joe Rogan came up, and we don't listen to Joe Rogan.
Right.
I listen every once in a while if he has a particular guest on, maybe. But we're not listeners of that show. just the language, and I'm not saying anything against him. It's just for our own purposes. And he goes, Dad, think I could listen? Do you mind? I said, well, man, you're 18. You got to make your own decisions. That's how I've always been that way with him. You're 16. You got to make your own decisions. I always make him make his own decisions. But he knew, okay, we don't listen to stuff with lots of language.
Right,
and lots of, he said, but it's 3 hours, Dad.
Wow.
And I went, cool, man. I think you should listen to it. I'll listen to it too.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, I know immediately somebody out there will go, well, Joe Rogan, and that slants one way and that.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, first of all, raised money for the Bernie Sanders campaign two election cycles ago.
Yeah.
So this is not some conservative guy. But the idea that there is a platform with long-form conversation is appealing to a younger voter. And you know what we've been taught our whole lives in student ministry? Oh, you can't talk to them a long time.
Yeah.
They only have a 7-minute attention span. You got to distract them with something else every 5 seconds. You got to play a game. You got to do this. And you know what they're saying? No, we're ready for meat and potatoes. We want to sit down at the table and have a real meal, have a hearty meal. Man. Listen to big ideas, think critically. And so I think what encourages me is that we are becoming a society where more and more long-form conversation is happening, and legacy media is dwindling. It's dying. Yeah. Now, could they? Anybody with money can make a comeback. So they got money, they got technology, they can make a comeback. But right now, legacy media is dying. Yeah. And long-form conversation is just dwarfing.
It is, man.
The numbers of legacy media through these podcasting and all the other stuff. And so what encourages me is that wherever there can be a healthy conversation, boy, is a great opportunity for the advancement of the gospel.
Yeah, man. So good.
Is such a great, because I think that Christian ideas are the best.
Yeah. I tend to think the same.
I think that our message. I think
I tend to think the same.
So like any time there's air for real, long, authentic conversation. Man. I think that's a door of opportunity, to borrow that phrase from the Apostle Paul. So that encourages me. The second thing that encourages me is what happened in Florida. And I'm so grateful that Amendment 4 got voted down. Now, why did Amendment 4 get voted down? Because it would have passed if we were like other states.
And so those who don't know, who aren't here,
Amendment 4 was the amendment to make abortion a fundamental right.
Yes.
So Roe v. Wade gets overturned a couple years ago, or several years ago, excuse me. And I can't remember time, but a few years ago, whatever it was, and it becomes a states' right issue, and so it became a states' right issue, and it was on the ballot in 10 states.
Yes,
and in Florida was one of them, and it was Amendment 4 in Florida, and it got voted down. And it got voted down primarily because of two things. One, because our governor was courageous enough to go, "I'm going to fight for this." A lot of governors didn't. They're like, you do vote your conscience, you do your thing. No, he's going, no. We're talking about life and the safety of life. So whatever you think of Ron DeSantis, he went out on a limb for this one.
He did.
Number two, it passed because in our state, to have an amendment pass, you have to have 60% of the vote. In other states, it's 50-50. It's whoever gets over 50%. So in Missouri, it didn't. It didn't pass. It did pass. The amendment did pass. Right. Because they only require 50%.
Yeah, man.
In Florida, it didn't pass because we require 60% for any amendment to be passed and become part of our constitution, state constitution. So, I'm encouraged by the fact that for now, in our state, we are valuing the sanctity of human life as it pertains to the abortion issue, and I'll always say it that way, Jeff. Because I think the sanctity of human life is about more than just abortion.
Right.
It's about a lot of different issues. But in this amendment, it did pertain to abortion.
Right.
So as it pertains to abortion, it was voted. That encouraged me. It was voted down.
Yeah. No, man, I agree with you, man. That's so good. And so it was an interesting night, man.
Yeah.
And a lot of different things.
Well, let's close out this way. What concerns you as we go forward?
My concern is that we still in the midst of.
Why do you have a red hat back there? Why is that? I'm just kidding.
That's Brian's. It's Brian's hat.
I'm just kidding. He doesn't have a red hat. I'm just kidding.
Dr. J would be happy if I did.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, he would.
But I think I'm concerned. I worry and concern a little bit, Brent, still about the divisiveness that's in our culture. There's a lot of emotions and feelings around this election. The results, the elections are over. We've got the results. We know who our commander-in-chief is. But let's be honest, there are a large constituent of our country that is unhappy and feels a certain kind of way about that, and is committed to be vocal about that. And a large constituent of those are also evangelicals, people who are in the local church. And so, I know that uniformity is never the goal, because uniformity is all about, sameness, and so what makes our country so beautiful is that we're diverse, we're eclectic, you have, it's just, it's a hodgepodge of different ethnicities, personalities, socioeconomics, educational backgrounds, all of those things, Protestant denominations, all of those, that's what makes our country, to me, beautiful. But I am, it saddens me that we still have this deep-seated division that is still permeating within our culture. And my prayer is that now that there's, at least for the next 4 years, there's no more presidential ads that'll be played, campaign ads that'll be played, or
thank God.
Yes, exactly. No more rallies and all that. That, man, we can focus on, our attentions on trying to make our country healthy and whole. But I'm concerned with still the divisive feelings that are there, and the emotional feelings that are there, especially from many, if I'm being honest, many in the African American community who feel a certain kind of way about our president, and we can say that now, about our president. I mean, Donald Trump, right, wrong, excuse me, not right, wrong, but whether you voted or not voted, he is our next commander in chief, and so I just that really breaks my heart, makes me sad. And this about me. I'm committed to having as many conversations with my brothers and sisters on, both black, white, Latino, I don't care, but just in trying to have conversations like, man, let's find this center point for us to be able to surround ourselves. And because it doesn't do our country any good to have this perpetuation of this divisiveness that's in our country. And so I'm hoping that we can get to a better place.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything for you?
What concerns me is the pro-life movement. It lost last night. It lost. I mean, we only had abortion. An abortion amendment was on was up for vote in 10 states.
I see. Oh, I was saying it was like, wait, but majority of, I got you.
But only two voted it down. I think it's South Dakota and Florida.
Yeah, you're right.
And so 8 states voted for abortion to be a fundamental right in their state.
Yeah.
So
that is very true. Yeah,
the pro-life movement.
Well said.
Again, and we've discussed this in other places and platforms, but the sanctity of life speaks to a variety of issues. And when you talk about pro-life or pro-choice, those two phrases have been attached to abortion. Totally understand that. So with that in mind, the pro-life movement lost last night in 8 states. So it has a lot of ground to make. That concerns me.
Yeah, no,
what
great
concerns me is there's a lot of people who get excited about Roe v. Wade, who will clap when somebody says something about, but when it came time to go into a voting booth or to fill out a ballot, obviously they weren't consistent in that. I Jeff, I don't believe that as a Christian I am ever going to be fully at home in a political party.
Yeah, no,
when pilgrimage is your paradigm for being a disciple, you're never at home. So I feel strongly about the family.
Yeah.
I feel strongly about the immigrant.
Same.
I feel strongly about racial justice.
Same.
I feel strongly about the unborn.
Yeah,
but the unborn were on the ballot, so that's why I'm talking about that.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, that's not a Republican issue. That's a Christian issue.
Right.
And the fact that this issue lost so overwhelmingly last night.
Yeah.
And you know what I wish would have happened? More governors would have been courageous enough to go, I'll risk my entire career. More politicians, I'll say it that way, would have been brave enough to go, I will risk my entire political future, my entire career on this issue.
Yeah,
because it's that important.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Yeah.
And we lost.
Yeah. Man, well said as well. Yeah, 100%.
Is that
agree.
Fair?
No, it's 1,000% fair, man. And it just is a great reminder, Brent, that we still, need to do everything we can to make Jesus known, and every aspect of our culture, society, and our country, and everything that we do. And because though we have a new president, doesn't mean that there isn't still work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so man, well, it's going to be some interesting days ahead.
Interesting days
ahead, man. So that was what happened this week in America.
Yeah.
This week in America. Yeah. We had a new president elected. Thank
God for democracy,
too. Yeah.
You and I have gotten to travel the world, Jeff.
We have.
We've been in a lot of places. We've been in a lot of places where we had to be real quiet that we were there.
Yeah.
We've been in a lot of places where, people didn't have a voice. We've been in a lot of places. I mean, we've been to countries and places and ministered to people.
Yeah, man.
Who would give anything to have the freedoms to be able to have an election and turn around the next day and talk about it.
Man, come on.
And so, thank God for democracy.
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
Amen.
God knows. And we're not going to have a perfect system till we get to heaven.
Right.
And in heaven, it's going to be a Jesusocracy. Thank God.
I love that.
But for now, this is the best we got.
Yeah.
And so thank God for it. I do think it is a blessing in that sense when you look at other places around the world.
Yeah, man.
So even with, there's surprises and there's encouragements and there's some big uphill battles for us that we need to be concerned about. Even with all that, we're waking up the day after an election, and you and I can have this conversation because of the democracy that God has allowed us to live in. Doesn't mean we're better than anybody else, but it would also be silly of us not to recognize, dang, we're blessed.
Yeah, man. Come on. Hey, that's a good word right there, and a great way to put a pin right there, man.
Yeah.
And so it's a great conversation, man. Thank you, brother. I like that one. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope it's good for you. And regardless of where you are on it, how you feel, man, let's make sure that we are salt and light.
Yep.
And how we live before others, and not just our conduct, but in our speech and just our interactions. And so until next time,
wander well and shine like stars.
take care. Peace out.